Hello and welcome to episode 2 of the Snowflakes podcast. Thank you for all of the responses on the first episode. It's greatly appreciated.
Yeah, it's done really well.
And straight into this episode, we're starting off with Owen Patterson, the Tory sleaze.
So, the former Conservative MP, the now former Conservative MP, Owen Patterson, had a second job for Randux Laboratories, in which he earned £8,000 per month for actually only 16 hours of work.
Yeah.
Now, we'll get on to the 16 hours of work bit in a second.
I mean, that equates to £500 per hour.
Okay, we'll get on to it now.
But yeah, I mean, that's a crazy amount of money. Just minimum wage, what is it, it's like £7.50 an hour?
£7.50,
Yeah.
Being raised, but yeah.
But it's still.
Well,
it's right now it's £7.50.
It's been in the process of being raised for like 4 years now.
Yeah,
isn't it?
because of inflation and things. And anyway, when it's raised, what will it be raised to? What is it, £9.50?
£7.60.
Anyway, a lot less than. I bet it won't be £500 an
Yes.
hour.
Yeah.
And,
Anyway.
well, first of all, let's just ask ourselves this question. Do we think members of parliament, elected officials, elected by the people, do we think they should have, second jobs in the first place?
Not at all. Nah, their 100% priority should be being an MP. That's what they've been elected to do, and that's what they should stay doing for their whole term.
And the job itself, being an MP, should take up all of their time.
Yeah.
They don't need the extra money. They have a salary of £80,000.
It's 90,000 years.
Yeah.
I think, no, it was 79,000, I think.
Oh.
Don't know why.
Well, anyway, around
A
£80,000,
lot
which is
of
more
money,
than enough.
Yeah.
And that is, for them to carry out research, but that should take up all of their time. They shouldn't have time to have a second job.
Yeah, it's their job. That's how jobs work.
Yeah.
Anyway, at this stage, it's not against the rules for a member of parliament to have a second job. So at this stage, Owen Patterson hasn't broken any rules. But the company received £133 million contract by the Department of Health and Social Care, Matt Hancock, in March of 2020 to produce testing kits. And then, 6 months later, a further £347 million contract was awarded, and he was found to have breached the paid advocacy rules in October of 2021.
God, I'm sure those contracts are purely coincidental. I'm sure it's nothing to do with that Tory MP being a part of that company.
Yeah.
Nothing. It was just a
Well,
pure
also-
coincidence at all.
The testing kits, the things that we now have like stacks of that are about this high in our houses because there's just too many of them. I don't know what the government's done, but they've
screwed it up.
they've added an extra 0 to the number we need or something. So
Especially as a lot of these tests don't even work, so they might have wasted a bit of money there.
And COVID tests have expiry dates.
Yeah.
Liquid in them. I don't know what it is.
I mean, the whole of it, all the plastic as well. Like,
yeah, there's stupid amounts of plastic. I mean, it makes sense because it's technically a biohazard, but still, you could make them more efficient.
Anyway, back to
So what it seems is that Owen Patterson has been furthering the wishes of this company, Randux Laboratories, while being paid an extraordinary large amount of money for doing it. And yeah,
That's
he got
corruption.
caught basically. He got caught for his corruption.
Yeah, an amendment was put in motion by the Conservative backbencher Andrea Leadsom, and it was to delay the consideration of Paterson's suspension and to set up a new committee to investigate the disciplinary process for MPs, which is the equivalent of we've been found to break the rules. Let's just change the rules.
Well,
so
not he, but
as a collective, the Conservative.
It's
no,
just-
because it's not the Conservative Party that's breaking the rules. It's one individual in the party.
True.
But the party, what that shows is that the party are okay for the rules to be broken because they're wanting to change the rules.
Yeah, the media have given him at most like a slap on the wrist verbally, and nothing's going to happen because, well, why would anything happen? Nothing's bad's going to happen if they don't take action.
I mean, it's public outcry that's forced him to decline, resign, not
So,
anything else.
We've seen before that Boris doesn't really care about public opinion or public outcry. The
So
only time
any
it matters
election.
is when there's an election, and there's no election. So he's fine.
I'm just wondering what crime this would be like considered if it weren't an MP doing it.
I mean,
Like, is it fraud or is it?
it's
I
corruption.
don't necessarily
isn't
think
it?
it's not fraud as such because the money's all legitimate.
Well, I think it's some sort of corruption, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Well,
I mean,
yeah.
the legality of it's questionable. The morality, though, it's not good. I
Yeah.
think we can all agree on that.
Yeah.
Like, but yeah, so the amendment that they were looking for was passed 250 to 232. The Conservatives tried to get Paterson off, but he resigned on the 4th of November. What day is it today? The 8th in this
Going up on the 9th,
Yeah.
probably.
Yes.
But yeah, so I mean,
I don't know
There
why
you
to
go.
clarify that. You can just scroll down.
And when I see, when you see former Prime Minister John Major, having a big go at Owen Patterson and the Conservative Party for this, dishonesty. I think I don't really know why he's doing that because Tory sleaze is actually a phrase that originated while he was Prime Minister in the 1990s. And when you see Neil Hamilton, who the infamous incident his corruption in sleaze, supporting Owen Patterson. I think that tells you everything you need to know about this situation. And
yeah, I think John Major actually, he came out and talked about how the handling of it by Boris Johnson is mainly critical because, I mean, say what you want about him and his involvement in the sleaze, but he claims to to have handled it well, and nothing like Boris. Boris made many U-turns. He made a U-turn without even telling Owen Patterson.
Boris's U-turns have U-turns.
Yeah, like,
that doesn't even make sense geometrically, but
yeah, it's still it's like
massive. So Owen Patterson comes out, with victory in his mind, and then because of the outrageous backlash, Boris decides that no, we're not going to do this actually.
And it's
We're gonna
actually
change our
the
minds.
backlash of his own MPs as
Yeah.
well. Because if you look at that thing,
Yeah.
there, 232, that's not all opposition MPs. There's a considerable amount of Conservative MPs in that vote, a more maybe honourable class of Conservative MP, if that's possible. I can't say that. But yeah, like I think that's another issue for Boris. That he's not that popular amongst the Conservative element of the party. He's spending like a Labour government, like good or bad thing, call it what you will, but it just, he's worried about his positions right now. He doesn't give a shit what the people think, which is a bad thing, but because they don't have any power right now. There's not going to be an election for at least a couple of years, and right now his biggest threat are the other MPs in his party, and it is cowardice really as well that he doesn't care about public opinion. Of course he doesn't care about public opinion, but in the end, like, it just go another hand to Boris being making bad decisions again and again.
I think a point also is that the only reason Owen Patterson has been called out and has resigned is because the public outcry caught on. There's a word, I think, democracy, which is where we've been dulled by so many outcries of corruption that now it doesn't shock us anymore like it would have, say, 50 years ago, and that's a problem. So now governments and corrupt officials can get away with anything, even if the public finds out, because they think that's just politicians doing what politicians do, being corrupt. And that's a gamble which a lot of Conservative MPs, Labour MPs, when they're in power, take. They assume that if the public finds out, there won't be enough outcry for it to actually affect their position, which is a big problem.
basically they can just do what they want without any consequences.
Yeah, I think also the lacklustre response of the opposition. I mean, Keir Starmer is kind of doing his usual thing, which is what an opposition would do. I'm not criticising him for that.
Quick question. Have you seen today?
What's he did today?
Okay. Don't criticise on that because don't criticise on that until you've watched what's happened today.
What's
because
happened
actually,
today? Fill us in, Arthur.
Personally, I think it's been okay. You'll have to watch it. I'm not going to tell you exactly what happened because I haven't seen all of it myself. But I've seen the reaction from conservative political commentators and left-wing Labour political commentators, and they've both been praising Keir Starmer. So I haven't watched it myself, but I've heard very positive praise to him on that.
Just say what I was going to say.
Yeah,
I mean, I
don't think the opposition from Labour has been bad on this matter. Actually,
I'm saying they don't press it. That's my issue. They don't press it far enough. I feel like they just say their usual Tories liars, Tories bad, which is true. But again, it's just
it's not really a true statement.
They're doing the same thing they did 50 years ago, but the difference is 50 years ago people cared about these cries of corruption. So if they bought out and they said this official is being corrupt, people cared back then. Now it happens so often, people don't care. The same response can't be warranted. They need to up their game, push it more.
Joe, you can try and oppose Keir Starmer on everything if you want to.
I don't.
But I myself am going to be very critical of Keir Starmer in our next part of this podcast. But on an issue where he opposes Conservative corruption, he calls out Conservative corruption, and you see these far left political commentators like Aaron Bastani having a go at Keir Starmer for calling out Tory corruption. It just shows that sometimes it's just it's. They forget what the real issue is here, and it's just anything to have a go at Keir Starmer. Sometimes that's how it feels.
Yeah, I get that. But I'm still allowed to say that the lacklustre response. I feel like
I personally don't think that.
Well, obviously, whatever happens today, I don't know. I could be really. I mean, I'll admit when I'm wrong when I look at it later, but we'll see. But yeah,
we're really hinting at this video. I'm gonna need to put the video on a thing here.
Oh god.
Another point that I'd like to make on this quickly is that Conservative commentator Tom Harwood, who's a host. Do you know who Tom Harwood is? No, okay. He's a political commentator for GB News, and he put out a tweet the other day saying neither party are covering themselves in glory this week, and then Owen Patterson and the former Labour MP Claudia Webb, who was convicted of harassment a couple of weeks ago, and I just think that it's very wrong for you to try and say that because let's look at how the two parties have handled this. The Conservatives tried to get Owen Patterson off, while Labour, withdraw the whip from her straight away, and then when she was found guilty, permanently expelled her from the party and called for her to resign. So the handling of these two situations has been very different. And I think it's important that we understand that rather than trying to like group them together. Like, and by the way, threatening to throw acid on somebody is, in my opinion, far more worse of a crime than what Owen Patterson did. But I think Labour's reaction has been far stronger than the Conservatives.
Yeah. I wasn't talking about the reactions of the party in those individual cases. I was talking about just the opposition, like the typical opposition being. I mean, I get it. It's what an opposition does, but I just
It's what
feel
they're
like
meant to do.
Yeah,
They can't support the Conservatives.
yeah.
They
You know,
complain when he doesn't.
No.
he doesn't
I
oppose,
would say,
and
I would
then
say
he-
it's just not like it's just not. I mean, obviously, but I don't think it was at the start. I don't think it was just.
Yeah.
Because I don't think even himself there at the start, he thought it was going to be another, like Jacob said, another corruption scandal that goes away out in the media in a week when he gets a dry story. So he's just doing his generic response.
And multiple polls, by the way, are showing a massive decrease in Conservative popularity, which is probably as a result of this. But anyway, ultimately, I think what this debacle really shows is that the Tories are perfectly willing to for corruption to occur and not to punish those involved. Meaning, like, it can happen as much as they want, and as long as they don't get caught, they have no issue with it, really. And imagine if nobody found out about this. He'd carry on lining his own pockets, helping this company, and
And how many stuff do we not know about as well? In
Yeah.
all parties, really.
That's
Like-
I'm sure in
always
all
really
parties there's
Yeah,
this kind
yeah.
of thing going on, and that's not mutually exclusive to the Conservative Party. It just seems to happen a bit more in the Conservative.
or at least it gets found out.
Yeah, well, who knows? But are we going to move on? Any other
Yeah.
points? Or we move on to the next topic?
I was just thinking how it's not really something you see that often. You see people bending rules, you see people breaking rules. But you never see someone blatantly breaking the rule and then they change the rule so they didn't break the rule.
then,
It's
then they changed the rules again, so they did.
Yeah. I mean, politics, everyone.
I think that does raise a bit of an issue because you do always hear when people break rules, you never hear when they follow rules because, well,
True.
why would you
Yeah,
hear when
yeah.
they follow? So that does, like, especially in the media, create a lot of negativity, but there's not really a solution for that because you can't every morning say another Tory MP has gone about a regular day of work and not committed any
Yeah.
crimes. It doesn't work.
Anyway, the next topic, right? Keir Starmer, my favourite human in the world. He has gone back on another leadership pledge. He made a bunch of pledges during his leadership campaign.
10 key pledges.
Isn't that what leadership pledges are for?
Yeah, well, exactly.
Anyway,
I'm just saying it seems like nothing ever happens when someone says they're going to do it.
In early 2020, Keir Starmer pledged that he would abolish the House of Lords as one of his 10 key pledges. Well, first of all, do we think that the House of Lords should actually be abolished?
I believe for our parliamentary system to be better, the House of Lords should be restructured. I think as a concept it should be abolished, but I think there needs to be a group of people, experts in there. Like a lot of lords are experts in their field. I think that should be translated into a new system that can check over laws to make sure they're applicable to. Because we can't expect MPs to be
Okay, but
experts. on everything.
quick question, just as the current House of Lords, like as it is today, yes or no? Abolish it, yes or no?
yeah.
Would you rather keep it or would you rather get rid of it?
Yeah,
Okay.
change it. I think
Yeah,
keep or change is the question we should be asking.
I think as all things it needs to be improved. I would say that don't really abolish it until we have an actual stable parliament. Because my worry is, I'm being serious, is that if we abolish the House of Lords, the MPs aren't really going to be able to do anything. They'll push through bills that will end up having weird things that people will abuse. I'm not really explaining this to you.
Can I play devil's advocate here? I mean, we've actually technically got the strongest government we've had in a long time. This is one of the biggest majorities we've had. I mean, I'm not saying it is though.
Majority doesn't really account for strength of government.
But it's stable.
I'm thinking in terms of the quality of the bills that the MPs
Yeah.
are trying to
Yeah.
pass.
But anyway, back to Keir Starmer.
Well, first of all, on the House of Lords.
Oh,
real
you can
quick,
say yeah. Sorry.
It's not just you, bro. Personally, I just think we should just get rid of it anyway. I think any kind of system where you can obtain political power through who your parents were is wrong and shouldn't exist.
Yeah,
what do you think?
that's where it needs to be
What do you
changed.
think, Jacob?
I think the concept of lords should be abolished, especially with now peerages being given out for bribes.
Well, that's
Yeah.
debatable, but-
Yeah.
yeah.
We should put proper experts in place, and while there are some experts now, there's also businessmen who had enough money to buy a lord title.
Yeah.
So we need to make sure that the exclusive club that the House of Lords has kind of become is abolished and turned into more of a committee where people can, with expert opinions, can come together and actually try and help instead of just safeguard their own future, their own pensions, their own households.
Can I make one last point before we move on to the next bit? I think I think an idea. Maybe let's abolish parties in the House of Lords as well, because I'm thinking.
I didn't realise that. They have
Yeah,
parties.
the Lords are aligned to political
Well,
parties.
some of them are not.
Well, not
a lot
all of them.
are,
Like
not.
they can be.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, if we want a body of experts, we want them to be neutral. And I think having members of the party in the House of Lords, I think that kind of undermines the system. But anyway,
Well, my very negative opinion of the House of Lords is quite why this has pissed me off quite so much, because he has already gone back on a pledge to nationalise industry. He said that he was going to nationalise industry. He's recently said that he wouldn't do that. I didn't get as annoyed by that because personally, I think I don't support high levels of nationalisation. So that didn't annoy me quite as much as this. But it does show that maybe he just can't be trusted. What do you think?
I mean, yeah, like, he's made... I mean, we always go on about Tories going back on promises. This is the leader of the Labour Party going back on two of his, out of his key promises, two of them. And they're pretty big ones as well. That is serious, like, societal change. Getting rid of the House of Lords, how long... I mean, it's been there since Parliament's been created. Like, I mean, that was such a big part...
I mean, to be fair, it's a big change, and we do need changes. We
Yeah,
need things to
yeah.
happen.
But in order to make that change, we need the correct infrastructure for
Mm.
that change to go ahead. We can't just abolish the House of Lords and expect everyone to keep on running smoothly.
Yeah, I mean, just and the fact that we can't trust our own, well, potentially elected leader to not go back on those decisions, like, I mean, potentially elected.
Well,
to be
like
honest,
the difference being, I guess, is that if he does get elected as Prime Minister, that's probably quite unlikely at this stage that he will get elected as Prime Minister. But if he does, he will get voted on by saying this already. So it's probably better that he says this now than getting into power and then doing it.
True.
But
True.
I'd rather he did it now, but I still,
But this
Oh,
is
so this
still
is like him saying, I'm going back on this.
Yeah.
This was his leadership campaign for the Labour Party, so he's betrayed the Labour voters, which arguably is more important because the Labour voters are the core of your electoral campaign.
They're the ones who put you in this
Yeah,
position.
exactly, and they're the ones who are going to give you the majority of your seats. And if you betray them, well, where are they going to go? Are they going to go to the Greens, the Lib Dems, like?
And the problem is now this has become the norm for party leaders, for prime ministers to go back on their promises, and because there's no one really to hold them accountable aside from election times, they can put something in their manifesto and then go back on it. You've already elected them in, and the fact that this has become the norm is once again just showing that something's gone drastically wrong if we're no longer outraged.
It's not as bad as like people who like Boris, who just will literally stand up in front of a camera and just lie through their teeth for 10 minutes straight. To be fair, it's getting to the point where it's a bit of a skill, but again, as Jacob said, it's been normalised to where the point of the likes of Boris can just lie through their teeth and nothing happens.
Well,
nothing has happened to Boris at all.
all politicians lie to an extent. Conservative, Labour, all of them.
Well, but they
and it's
should-
ridiculous. And it's ridiculous that that's just accepted.
Yeah.
Politicians are going to lie. Okay.
I mean,
move
in
on.
my opinion, any form of like lying with like intent to mislead or knowingly saying something that's untrue, I think should mean that you're permanently like kicked out of being a politician and you're struck off like a register of being allowed to be a politician and together with jail time. Like
Just bring us back to Keir Starmer for a second. I think what we saw when he ran for Labour leader was him building on the Corbyn era with some quite far left policies. And since he's become the leader of the Labour Party, that's kind of changed a bit into what's looking more and more like a Blairite tribute act, which isn't a good look. And look, at the end of the day, I still support him. I still want him to succeed. I still want him to be Prime Minister one day. But I just hope that he's not as bad as Boris, obviously.
No.
Before we even ask that question, he isn't. But just don't. You need to be the opposite of him. You can't be just doing what he does, but not as bad.
Yeah.
Because if you want to criticise him, you can't adopt his same techniques.
Yeah, I've been more supportive of him than most, but he needs to. Time's running out. He needs to start doing better. In my opinion.
When you've lost Arthur Keir Starmer, you're done for. Like,
He's gonna just turn up at the Labour headquarters and,
oh god.
with the manifesto.
Yeah, but I mean that's our final question on the slide. Is Starmer just as bad as Boris? No, obviously he's not just as bad.
Starmer's obviously bad for going back on things he
Yeah.
said he's going to do, but like on like a scale of lying, Starmer's like with the actors here. Starmer's like here, and Boris is kind of like
He's
off
off
screen
his
there.
way.
Yeah, it's gone.
Yeah. There's a wall about like 3 meters away. I think
He's past it.
it's in the like next door but free.
But yeah, no, obviously you can't just weigh it up like that. But when you look at it, like, the opposition should stand for whatever the opposition is. If the Conservative Party is the opposition, the opposition should stand for the opposite of what the current ruling party is doing, and it should stand for clarity and stuff, and it should stand for. I mean, it's also the anti-sleaze and stuff, and that's one of Keir Starmer's big things is the anti-sleaze.
Yeah, that's one of his big.
And I'd argue that going back on a fundamental promise to the Labour voters, and to technically by extent the whole country, that is the biggest leader of them all, really.
So,
Yeah.
so you're saying like opposition should kind of go against the main party? Is that what you?
I'm saying I'm saying the opposition should be the countervailing power.
They should oppose.
They should oppose them. They should act in a manner that's different. Keir Starmer, by doing this, is acting in a similar manner to Boris.
Because I just feel like, I don't know, I feel like what you end up with is with opposition parties and main parties, and this will kind of get on when we talk about voting systems and stuff. It's when you've got two opposing forces, you end up with no forward progress. It's like trying to stick two Falcon 9 boosters, attach the tops of them together, and then try to go to space. It doesn't work because the engines are pointing inwards.
I have a personal experience there.
I'm sure
Let's just ask this question before we move on. It's very simple, you know. Is it time? Is Keir Starmer's time as leader of the Labour Party? Do you think it should end now, or are you willing to see what else he could do?
Who would go there instead of him?
Counter-runner.
No, but we've seen with Corbyn. Corbyn was the most charismatic face the Labour Party has had in a while. And now Starmer, when he came in, he was trying to retain the same level of interest Corbyn brought in with like some of his left policies. Now he's been dropping them, but getting rid of him now won't change the fact that the next leader will go back on their promises.
No, I don't think it's even that. I think the Labour Party is extremely unstable right now, and I think the last thing, and if we ignore the state of the party, if we look at the election, we are changing a leader. Like he needs to see the next election through. Basically, what I'm saying.
Yeah, I don't think it's fair to change a leader before this is the
Yeah.
general election. But
I support him wholeheartedly as I support the Labour Party. But I'm even like, I mean, you're struggling off. Imagine how I feel, you know.
It sets a dangerous precedent because after Jeremy Corbyn lost the general election, the Labour Party fell into like a state of disrepair. Like, who are we going to put forward now?
Well, and who are we going to blame?
Yeah, and if they just keep on every time there's a mishap changing the leader, each time they think we're not going to win, then realistically they won't win the next general election. I'll be honest.
Can we agree? It's going to be a when at this point. If Keir Starmer wins the next general election, like, that'll be a pretty big achievement. But like, I mean, something major must happen. But I won't say when. If Keir Starmer wins the next election, do we think he should be stepped down as Labour leader?
if he wins the next election,
If he doesn't win.
yeah,
If he wins.
I think it's the manner of defeat. You know,
Yeah.
if he gains seats but loses, then maybe not.
But getting your seat's going to be a given for
We'll
this election.
look at it. We'll look at
Well,
it
it's
then.
not-
But
is it him
it's the manner of defeat. But if he loses a similar way or even closely similar to 2019, then absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, I don't know. I feel like you don't really want to hop swap leaders out like you're Indiana Jones with the golden statue thing.
Not necessarily though, because if you have a leader that loses badly,
Yeah.
then
You
you
don't
need to
want
go.
them as the
maybe.
face of your party.
Corbyn technically lost in 2017, but he didn't go because that was still a good performance.
Yeah,
He massively improved. That's why he remained as a leader for another 2 years until.
But
he
Sorry,
badly
I
lost.
can you say that was a good performance again, please?
Then he lost
I've already said
drastically.
it. I've already said it was a good
2019.
performance many times.
Yeah.
It makes sense when he stepped down then after his total, complete and utter humiliation in the general election.
Yeah.
It makes sense.
Anyway, next topic, or we got any other points?
Yeah, that's it.
I was going to say something that it's gone.
Oh,
I don't know
well.
why it's gone.
Anyway, so let's do something different here. We've done so far news stories of the week and stuff, but now we're going to do something called an overarching topic, which is going to be a generic political thing. And what we're doing this week is the voting system for the United Kingdom and comparing it to other voting systems. So, shall I describe it?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in the
What are
UK, yeah. So in the UK, we have the first past the post system.
It's the same in the US as well.
Yeah, well,
I mean,
similar.
It's not the
kind
same
of a-
system. It's
similar-
the same. Yeah.
Same
Anyway,
premise.
It works.
So the premise is that our country, well, the country of first past the post, it's split into areas. In the UK, it's constituencies with about equal population, and in each constituency, they vote for a representative, and the representative is put forward by parties or independents. And in that constituency, once the representative, the MP electorate gets the most votes, that constituency is locked in as that party or independent.
And that's where the problem starts. Where
Yeah.
the person with the most votes wins. It makes sense in terms of a constituency, but once you start scaling it up, it kind of falls apart. We'll get on
But
to
what
that later.
first past the post does do is it's far more likely that a majority government will form, which creates more stability. That's a definite. But
Wow.
each vote does carry different weight, which means like depending on where you live, you might have a bigger say on who wins the general election, and that's just straight up unfair.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say, I think having a majority government, the way I think it doesn't need to be a requirement for stability. Like currently in the UK, if we don't have a majority government, nothing happens. And that's a problem with the governmental system
No, but I
and
mean,
the way
it's
that
a-
things are
it's a
structured. And
Political
not,
stability, even if you don't like who's in power, who's got the majority, that's still more stability than having like a minority government.
when
But
Theresa
if
May
you-
was in power, she did not have a majority, correct?
Correct.
Well, that's different because she had
She
the
lost
support of the DUP.
But would you say would you say even though Conservatives have a massive majority, it's still quite an unstable, feudalistic?
Look, at the end of the day, the majority of Conservative MPs still back him.
I think
it's stable. It is stable.
For the sake of stability is the sake as a generic form of
yeah.
not about opinions. We'll just talk about stability in general.
what I was going to say is that if you have a system of government that's geared towards having like loads of smaller parties, then it works because you don't end up having to have like a main party who then gets things through. Because the reason that majorities work is that the party can force every single one of their MPs to vote for something, which means that you've basically got no choice as to whether a bill's going to be passed or not. It doesn't really work very well.
So proportional representation, which is the alternative to first past.
Well, one of the alternatives.
Yeah,
the main,
yeah,
election
the main
systems.
alternative.
But what we're going to compare to today.
is where the percentage of votes is directly translated into the number of seats allocated in the parliament. So each vote matters the same in proportional representation. However, it is much harder to form majority government, as we've seen in history.
In my opinion, that's not a bad thing.
I mean, if we look at Germany, they never have majority governments. There's always coalitions, and like
What happened in 19?
what?
When was the Second World War?
Stop it. Okay. Anyway.
we won't.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I mean, they have. I mean, recently was it SDP, Green Party, and
Liberals.
the Liberals, and that is a solid coalition. There'll be stable governmental. The
They'll be
cabinet
able to govern for
yeah,
sure. Yeah.
and they will implement, and they will still manage to implement the social policies of the SDP. And I think I'm in agreement with Corey. I don't think a majority is necessarily needed in a government. I mean, in this system it is, unfortunately.
Yeah,
But-
but that's the problem with the system.
Yeah, exactly. Not a problem with politics in general. I think. Right, so let's have a look. This might appear on the screen. Are we gonna?
Yeah,
Maybe.
we'll try and show the results
Yeah,
of the 2019 general
put it
election on the
somewhere.
screen.
You can block any of our faces.
Yeah.
Fine.
Anyway,
Do you want me to
I'll read it out. Yeah. So Conservative Party won 365 seats, which happened to be an 80-seat majority in the House of Commons. However, they only won 43.6% of the vote, which means that in a first proportional representation system, they would get. I'm not sure of the exact figure, but far
Yeah.
far
Well,
less
they
than
get
365.
roughly 43%.
They get 43% of the seats in the House of Commons.
That's how.
Well, so I mean, let's look at the difference. It's about 10% difference between Labour got 32% of the vote, about 32.1 to be accurate, and so that's about a 10% difference. And they've somehow got 80 out of 600. That's like.
Yeah.
Well, 60 is a 10%. It would be a 60-seat difference, but it's somehow they magically got 20 seats more, and that's just not fair.
Another
Yeah.
point, and for the Liberal Democrats and the Scottish National Party. The Scottish National Party, 3.9%, 48 seats in the House of Commons. The Liberal Democrats, 11.6%, 11 seats in the House of Commons. We're beginning to see now how flawed this system
Yeah,
really
it's
is.
like so. It kind of is the camera frame rate gone weird? No, it's fine. Okay. So it basically means that you end up with the larger parties getting a much higher percentage of the vote than they should, and the smaller parties getting a much smaller percent of the vote than they should. And one of the things that I say a lot, and it's a really good way of just showing how flawed this system is imagine if you've got like a perfectly uniform people voting for like say 3 parties, and all 3 parties get 33% of the vote. Well, one party gets 33%, second party gets 33%, third party gets 34% of the vote. And that's not just because I can't do decimals. Now, that's all. If it's all perfectly kind of even between all the constituencies, then that means that the party with 34% gets 100% of the seats. Now, obviously, this is an extreme case, but that's just not acceptable for a system of first past the post, and that's what we see in terms of like why the bigger parties get more seats.
But
than
let
they
me
should.
bring up a very serious issue with proportional representation now.
Yeah.
It creates the ability for extremist parties like communist parties and fascist parties to get like a foothold in mainstream politics. Now,
Wow.
before you talk about communism for a second, let's talk about
No, I'm
fascism.
talking about a different thing actually.
Okay, but no, one second. And if that happens, it's dangerous, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which is why maybe there should be like a 5% hurdle, like we saw in the Federal Republic of Germany in the 1950s and 60s.
Yeah.
A-level history.
That's what I was going to say. Actually, yeah, I think there are systems in place to ensure that extremist parties don't get into power. But then when it comes to the question, if we're
But
blocking,
if you do that, then that's still not democracy.
Yeah, exactly.
So what do you consider?
But then, but communists and fascists are anti-democratic.
yeah.
So how are you able to compromise?
Does
it?
communism
It's very
lead
difficult
itself-
situation.
I mean, so you can argue communism is democratic because there are democratic votes
name me a
sometimes,
democratic
but
communist state.
No. Let me
Silence.
can I finish my point? You could argue because there's still democratic votes, but there's only one party in a communist system, so you could then again argue it's not a democratic system. So there's variables to it. There's still elections, but it doesn't mean it's democratic, and there also can mean it's democratic. But it's very complicated.
I think-
Communism's
and the
complicated.
other thing is like how the fact that communism in itself as a system usually leads to dictatorships
Yeah.
just because of the way it works. It's like some
And just
Communism will
death
never
and
work.
murder.
I'm saying it now. We'll get onto that in another episode. Be tuned for that because it will be all out war. But with first
Like
past
communism.
first. Yeah.
yeah.
Another major issue.
I should
is-
clarify, I'm not a communist, by the way. I'm a Marxist. It's different.
Okay.
It's different, trust me.
Okay.
He's
Another
very defensive.
major issue
He's gone red.
is the idea
Like
of
communism. Sorry.
shut up. Constituencies and gerrymandering.
Yeah.
Where with constituencies, you vote within the constituencies, and however, like geography-wise, there were different like ethnic minorities in different areas of Great Britain. Correct. Now that means if patterns have shown that, say, like people that like say the Windrush generation don't vote a certain way, then constituencies will be like chopped up to make it so that the vote turns out more pleasant for, say, Conservatives. And then that causes issues. It's still, first past the post, it's still you're voting within constituencies. But when you're merging the borders and trying to swindle your way into securing more votes and more stability, it's
Yeah.
undemocratic.
I think it happens in the US a lot more than the UK.
Yeah.
The UK
First
is
of all,
evident.
the system in the United States is far worse than the one in the
Yeah.
UK. People win with getting less votes, and that happens far too often. Anyway, let's just ask ourselves this question. Which one? Joe, first past the post or proportional
Proportional
representation?
representation.
Like for pure proportional representation, like Weimar Germany, or
I would have
About
to.
you.
I'd have to think about it because I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm still weighing up on the. Is it democratic to have this blocker to parties getting their representation?
Go on.
PR all the way. Like,
pure PR, or
I mean, as with everything, you have to make it slightly more complicated than it is. On the face.
Yeah.
One thing I quickly want to say: the system that was proposed in 2006 was
Oh
it?
yeah.
With the coalition of the Lib Dems and the Conservative Party.
that was not 2006, by the way.
Was it not 2006? Please fact check us. If there's anything else we've said that's wrong, please fact check us as well. It's
The
it's
2000.
useful.
So we're in the 2000s.
Sometime in the past 40 years.
Accuracy.
Yeah.
Woo.
That was not PR. That wasn't like there.
Well, there's no way the Conservatives would ever want.
Yeah,
No,
that's
because
representation.
it doesn't benefit the Conservatives.
No.
But that doesn't count as PR. And every time people say about adding PR, the Conservatives usually say that we voted for PR and we voted against it, and that's not the case.
Yeah.
Also, time has passed.
Yeah. So
That's
Jacob, let's just wrap this up real quickly. Jacob, which one?
Probably proportional representation, but not. You can't just implement it immediately.
Yeah,
You've got
of
to make
course, of
changes.
course. Well, yeah. For me, it's also proportional representation, but with certain blocks to make sure that these dangerous extremist, evil parties like communists and fascists do not
The
get any
Brexit
power.
Party.
No, they're not. They're not fascists, but no, they're
I mean,
I think the Brexit
But-
Party do count as fascists.
they don't.
But
But
they're
let's just
borderline.
make. I'm just gonna make this final point before we end right now. If there was a pure proportional representation system in the United Kingdom and there was a general election tomorrow, let me tell you this: there would probably end up being a coalition between Labour, Liberal Democrats, and the Green Party would also get quite a lot of votes, quite a lot of seats. Sorry, in
I can only see that as a good thing.
Yeah.
yeah. So and it shows that the right and the Conservatives are not the majority in the United Kingdom because they get 43.6% of the vote. Have right wing parties ever got more than 50% of the vote in the United Kingdom? I don't think so. The Conservative Party definitely haven't since the Second World War.
Yeah. Like I think that's a brilliant point to finish on. But any other points?
No.
Or?
No.
Right.
Well, wrapping it there.
Yeah, guys. Follow us on all our social medias. We've got Instagram, Twitter, TikTok.
Yeah.
And
if you wa-
subscribe.
Yeah,
If
it's
you're
all
watching
that.
this in the future, we may have a website. I'll link it below, probably
Yeah.
at some point.
It's all the Snowflakes podcast. Thank you very much for watching. Leave a comment, like the video, and thank you.
Goodbye.